2025 added over 600 new cards to the GLC legal card pool across 6 new sets. I've been racking my brain trying to come up with an idea for a quick and easy video for me to end the year on, because recapping the entire year of 2025 for GLC would take me way too long, and thankfully Jeff and Josh have already done that over on the Unfazed Facts podcast, so go check them out. Instead, I'm going to do something a little more quick and fun, hopefully. For each set that came out this year, I'm going to choose 3 winners, 1 card for each of 3 categories. A Golden Child card, the card that had the most hype from preview season and was actually able to live up to that hype in competitive play. A Biggest Disappointment card, the card that I felt had the biggest gap between how hyped it was during previews compared to how much use it's seeing now and how well it's performing after its release. And finally, to end each set on a positive note, I'll list the breakout star of the set, the card that ended up doing way better, or at least seeing way more use in competitive GLC play than anyone was expecting it to. So first up, we have Prismatic Evolutions, which was a reprint set from January that barely released any new cards that were legal or relevant for GLC, so this will be a quick one. The Golden Child for the set for GLC, and probably for Standard as well, was Budew. I actually still think Budew is kind of poop in a single prize expanded card pool format like GLC, at least in generic grass decks, but it has certainly been getting a lot of play in other players' grass decks, including Ben Morse, and it is a key early game card in what is arguably the most successful grass deck in the meta right now, which is Egg Mill. For me, the most disappointing card of the new set would be Amaris. Somehow, we still can't get a supporter that just straight up draws 4 cards with no downside. And while this seemed like the closest we'd get to such a card, it is very easy to get stuck with 5 cards in hand after drawing 4 if you draw into a bunch of supporters and energy cards, so this card has been relegated to the bulk pile. And the breakout star would be the Festival Lead Seaking. I don't really have any good tournament data for this being actually good, but I feel like I've heard at least one GLC content creator gushing about this card in their water deck, and its ability to do 120 damage and draw 4 cards for just 1 energy, and I needed something to fill this slot here, so this felt like a good enough choice. Up next we have Journey Together. There is actually a really tough choice here for the Golden Child of the set between Whale Lord and the Hops colorless package. Yeah, I'm kind of lumping them all together, but I'm actually going to give it to the Whale Lord here. While the Hops cards did see more initial success than Whale Lord, and even got 2 cards banned from the format, those things actually hurt the colorless type more in the long run, I think, than it helped. Whereas on the other hand, Whale Lord has really helped to cement Water's top placement as a top tier type in GLC, especially because it patched one of Bulky Water's worst matchups to Psychic by removing its weakness to Mimikyu, which was an easy one-shot return KO against the Special Waves Whale Lord, and this Mimikyu weakness to one of the most popular types in the format had been really holding Water back competitively, but now Whale Lord is much harder for most decks to answer cleanly. For the biggest disappointment of Journey Together, I think cards like Iono's Kilowattrel, Levincia, Magmortar, and Bennett are all in the running, but I think the card that got the most discussion leading up to release and now just sees 0 play for how much it was talked about has to be Redeemable Ticket. Folks were excited for this fixed version of Rotom decks to make accessing prized cards much easier, but it kept the same big problem as Rotom decks, which is that you are randomly prizing cards from your deck, and you may just end up creating a worse prizing situation than the one you started with. And for the breakout star, I had both Lilligant and Noivern as possible options, but in terms of actual raw tournament success compared to how much doubt people had about a card before the set's release, I'm going to have to give this one to Hops Dubwool, the goated Gust on a stick, which showed us just how powerful it can be for colorless to be able to use a boss effect while still playing a supporter for the turn, and what you can do with cards like Scoop Up Net and Devolution Spray, and this card is still seeing play in successful colorless decks today. Next up we have Destined Rivals, and for all its collector hype, was a pretty disappointing set in general for GLC. For the Golden Child, the award came down to either Rapidash or Shaman, and with Egg Mill Grass having a far more successful year than any fire deck in 2025, I'm going to have to give it to Shaman here as the Golden Child of the set. Now, like I said, there were a lot of disappointments in this set, from Ethan's Magcargo, Steven's Claydol, Annihilate, which was a big one for me personally, but this one also came down to 2 cards, Team Rocket's Arbok and Blaziken. And once again, I have to go by the gulf between the hype and the results. Blaziken was really getting hyped up as being the second coming of Amazing Raikou, but for the fire type. And after a spate of some decent results with the card online, we haven't really seen any good online results from Blaziken, and absolutely nothing in terms of big in-person events. It seems that the 120 damage is not enough to KO most active Pokemon, and there's been a rise in bench barriers since Rockstogi Tinglu has come out that people are starting to play, and that has hurt Blaziken. And finally, the few success stories from Destined Rivals. The breakout star from this set came down to 2 cards that exceeded all expectations, and while Misty Starmie has seen a bit of success at the top tables of the biggest GLC tournaments of the year, nothing can match the fervor that Andrew Mahone created in the casual side of the community with his inclusion of Team Rocket's Tyranitar in the Hitmon Bros list. So many players were caught up in the fervor of this deck and how much Mahone hyped it up on his channel and in the Discord, and it seemingly flooded locals tables, and many other content creators found success with the deck as well, even though it didn't seem to have much actual competitive success at larger in-person tournaments. Now moving on to Black Bolt and White Flare. This was another set with some interesting cards, but seemed to have very little impact on the format as a whole. One card stood out from all the others as being a powerful new search card, and the golden child of this set goes to, uncontested, to Hilda, which continues to see play in any deck using evolutions as well as needing to find special energy, specifically being a boon to the colorless type after losing access to 2 of its double energies and relying more and more on finding their single copy of double turbo energy. The biggest disappointment of the set has to go to the second coming of Foul Play Zoroark. I was never high on this card, but a lot of players were trying it in their Darkness decks, including an appearance on Tricky Jim's GLC Conquest series, with players hoping that a single energy attacker that could possibly use the new Ignition energy for its copy attack would be a big asset to Darkness decks. It just hasn't played out though. Mindjack's damage is easy to manipulate by a clued-in opponent, and there's fewer and fewer decks using attacks that can be easily copied for maximum effect. And the breakout star for this set is just as easy for me. It has to be Oceanic Gloom Frillish, a card that many players probably had written off as a basic Pokemon without a legal evolution in the format. The Akron, Ohio players ended up realizing that this was the perfect partner to finally unlock the potential of Garbotoxin Garbodor. Players have been trying to make Garbodor work for years in GLC, but by adding an item lock attacker to Psychic for the first time, Garbodor players can now slow down the early game much sooner and then combine ability lock with item lock and just completely shut down opponents for multiple turns before they start taking KOs with the powerful Iron Boulder. And this deck surprised everyone at the Mega Evolution 3K, with Jesse managing to make it all the way to the finals with Frillish. Moving into our penultimate set of the year with the base set of the new Mega Evolution block. This set was truly a game changer for GLC and really shook up the metagame. Every deck in the format got a major upgrade to their draw supporters thanks to the golden child from this set, the card that everyone knew was going to be going into pretty much every deck upon release, Lily's Determination. In a game of limited resources due to singleton restrictions, preserving those resources by shuffling them into the deck instead of discarding them is a huge upside, and this card combines the card draw volume of Professor's research with the ability to preserve resources of Cynthia, and has become an instant and enduring staple in every GLC deck upon its release. While everyone was bemoaning the release of Mystery Garden as more unnecessary purple support, with even standard players moaning about this, probably the biggest example of a card failing to live up to the hype, a card that many players were calling to be banned before it was even released. Forest of Vitality has truly failed to deliver results for the grass type that everyone thought it was going to, and is our biggest disappointment for Mega Evolution. A seemingly functional reprint of the banned Forest of Giants plants, the ability to evolve on the first turn is actually a pretty big limitation to this card. Along with Grass's inability to dig for cards that aren't Grass Pokemon, it turned out that the single copy of Forest in Grass decks, while certainly a boon, was not enough to bring Grass higher than a mid-tier type. And for the breakout star of the set, I was actually tempted to put Lunatone in this spot just because of how much doubt I was seeing about this card when it was first spoiled. But I think once we all saw the new Solrock spoiled, and that even standard players were using these cards to power up their decks, it was pretty obvious that Lunatone was going to be good. But I think the fighting card that did surprise a lot of us has to be the new Marshadow, a card that for 2 energy does 60 damage and becomes invincible if it can take a KO with that 60 damage attack. Now, in a world that is dominated by big basic attackers with 130 or more HP, and with Psychic being the most popular type in the game at the time and sporting a plethora of fighting resistances, I just didn't see how this Marshadow could ever get its attack off more than once in a game, and would surely just be negated by an Escape Rope or a Guzma, just like every time I seem to try to use Sonic Slip Garchomp. But with Premium Power Pro joining with Strong Energy and Muscle Band, along with Boss and Guzma, as well as chip damage from Ting Lu to soften up those big basics, Marshadow emerged as not just an impressive threat, it's actually become kind of oppressive to a lot of decks that need to put out small basics on the bench, or that don't have ways to heal off the Ting Lu damage. And finally, we have the latest set, Fantasmal Flames. This set is still being felt out by players, but with a full Grep 3K already in the books and a good month of tournaments being played by now, I think we have a pretty good handle on how the set is doing. The golden child that has lived up to the hype the best, I think, has to go to Toxtricity. I was originally going to give this to the Wondrous Patch item, thinking that it surely has become a staple in every Psychic deck by now, but while going over recent Psychic deck lists with a winning record in online tournaments, it seems that Wondrous Patch only has something like a 50% adoption rate at the higher tables. On the other hand, Toxtricity is in every Darkness deck, and we are finally seeing Darkness starting to see some success in online tournaments in the hands of players like Ghouls, Umbral, and Lee Hoffman. The biggest disappointment of the set, while I'd love to give this to Reshiram, and yet again, at Fire continuing to not see success, I'm probably the only one that thought Reshiram was going to save the Fire type. But Dawn was a card that everyone was gushing about when it was spoiled, and while it's found a home in standard format, it seems to have not found much competitive success in GLC, and I don't see it being used other than in a few grass decks here and there. I myself have found Dawn to be a bit clunky at times compared to Arizu, and not being able to get that second or third stage 1, and having to settle for getting a basic I don't need and a stage 2 I can't evolve into yet, can sometimes make the card feel very awkward. And for our final breakout star of the year, while I'd love to give this to the new Archaludon, which is starting to see an uptick in usage in metal decks alongside Galarian Berserker, it hasn't quite found its place in the meta yet. But a card that has risen to dominance has to be Zacian. And I distinctly remember when this was spoiled, there were a lot of doubts about whether it would replace Mewtwo as the 3-prize comeback attacker in Psychic, but it turns out that attacking for 1 less energy is a big upside, and 140 damage is still enough to KO the best basic attackers in the format right now, with those being Iron Boulder, Ting Lu, and Okidogi thanks to its weakness. So which set would I put in each of these categories? Well, I think Journey Together was certainly as broken of a set as everyone was expecting it to be, and was the only set to result in a card being banned this year, so that would be the Golden Child set. I think Destined Rivals was certainly the most disappointing set of the year, and the breakout set that surprised people the most, I think, would be Black Bolt and White Flare, due to how good Hilda and Frillish actually ended up being, as well as Ignition Energy giving a lot of colorless decks a big boost. But let me know in the comments, what was your most disappointing and most surprising cards of the year 2025? And how was your 2025 year overall for GLC? Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you all in 2026.